In the early 1400s, a giant fleet of ships sailed from China. These were the treasure ships of an admiral named Zheng He. They were the biggest ships the world had ever seen. They were like floating cities made of wood, stretching over 400 feet long. Imagine one of these huge ships next to the tiny boat Christopher Columbus would use almost a century later. His ship, the Santa Maria, was so small it could have been a lifeboat for just one of Zheng He's vessels. This single picture shows a simple truth. At that time, one power was much, much bigger than all the rest. That power was Ming China. In the 15th century, China was the richest, strongest, and most advanced civilization on Earth. While these great ships sailed the seas, workers were finishing a new palace for the emperor. It was called the Forbidden City. This was not just a building. It was a massive city inside a city, built with amazing skill and filled with unbelievable treasures. China had huge armies, giant cities, and amazing inventions like gunpowder and the printing press. They were the world's superpower. No one else was even close. Now let's travel across the world to Europe. At the same time, Europe was a broken and messy place. It was not one big kingdom, but a patchwork of small warring lands. The people were still recovering from a terrible sickness called the Black Death, which had taken away millions of people. Compared to the grand cities of China, Europe's towns were small, crowded, and dirty. Their kings were poor, and their armies were small. They were far behind in science and technology. From the outside, Europe looked weak and unimportant. It was on the very edge of the world stage. But then, history took a sudden turn. In China, after the amazing voyages of Zheng He, a big argument started in the emperor's court. The emperor's advisors, who were wise scholars, did not like the expensive sea trips. They believed China's strength came from its land and its farmers. These scholars thought the outside world was full of danger and had little to offer. They said China should focus on being perfect at home, not on exploring far away. They worried that trading with other countries would bring messy new ideas into their perfect world. So, the emperor made a choice. He listened to the scholars. The great voyages were stopped. The amazing treasure ships were pulled into harbors and left to fall apart. Some were even burned. China, the world's greatest power, closed its door to the sea. It was a great withdrawal from the world. As the world's biggest ships were being taken apart by their own makers, something different was happening. On the far western edge of the world, a tiny kingdom was making a very different choice. This small country, called Portugal, was a little strip of land next to the big, scary Atlantic Ocean. For centuries, this ocean was a wall, a place of monsters and fear. But the people of Portugal started to see it differently. They saw it not as an end, but as a beginning, a possible road to new places and new riches. While China chose to look inward, Europe was forced to look out. A huge change happened in the year 1453. The powerful Ottoman Empire captured the great city of Constantinople. This city was the main gateway for trade between Europe and Asia. With this gateway closed, the old land route for trade, the famous Silk Road, was now blocked. Suddenly, it was very hard for Europeans to get the things they wanted from the East. Things like spices became incredibly rare and expensive. For people in Europe, spices like pepper and cloves were more than just flavor. They were needed to keep meat from spoiling. Owning spices was also a way to show you were rich and important. This problem created a powerful need, a desperate push to find a new way to reach the East, by sea. But here is where the story takes a surprising turn. China's unity, its great strength, was also a weakness. One emperor could stop everything with a single order. Europe's biggest weakness, that it was broken into many competing kingdoms, became its secret weapon. Imagine a great race that no one could stop. When the small country of Portugal started exploring the coast of Africa, its neighbor Spain got nervous. Spain had to join the race to not be left behind. Soon, England, France, and the Netherlands all jumped in, each trying to outdo the others. No single king could call off this continent-wide competition. At the same time, another amazing tool appeared. The printing press, an idea that first came from China, was perfected in Europe by a man named Gutenberg. He used movable type, which meant letters could be moved around, to make new pages. This worked much better in Europe than in China. The Chinese language has thousands of characters, which made printing very slow. But European languages only use a small alphabet. This meant books and maps could be made very, very fast. Because of this, knowledge spread like wildfire. A map from a new voyage could be copied and shared in weeks. New ways to build ships or use the stars to find your way could reach sailors all across Europe. Each journey could build on the knowledge learned from the one before it. All of this competition and this explosion of new information was creating something the world had never seen before. It was not just about finding gold or a new route for spices. It was something much deeper. A whole new system for understanding the world was being born. It was a radical new way of thinking, of asking questions and testing the answers. This new idea would give Europe an advantage that would change the course of human history forever. The printing press was like a giant speaker, sending ideas everywhere. But just having more ideas wasn't enough. A new question started to pop up in Europe. How do we know which ideas are true? The answer was a radical new way of thinking. Today we call it the scientific method. It was a simple but powerful system. First, you guess how something works. Then, you test your guess with an experiment. Finally, you watch carefully to see what happens. Great thinkers showed the way. A man named Francis Bacon urged people to test everything. In Italy, Galileo Galilei built a telescope and looked at the stars. What he saw proved that old books about the sky were wrong. This was bigger than just a few discoveries. It created a culture of questioning. For the first time, it was okay to challenge old ideas. People like Isaac Newton could build on this, discovering the laws that run our universe. This curiosity became Europe's new engine. The story of China and Europe isn't about one people being better than another. It is a story about two different answers to a question we all face in our own lives. It is a choice between safety and discovery. Is it better to perfect what you already know and protect it? Or is it better to explore the unknown, even if it is dangerous? China chose to perfect its amazing world. Europe, broken and wanting more, chose to see what was over the horizon. And this brings us to one of the biggest what-ifs in all of history. What if the leaders of Ming China had made a different choice? What if Zheng He's huge treasure fleets had kept sailing? They were decades ahead of European explorers. They could have sailed around Africa, reached Europe, and perhaps even crossed the ocean to the Americas. Imagine a world where Chinese ships, not Spanish ones, first arrived in the New World. But history followed a different path. Europe's journey outward, fueled by competition and this new way of questioning everything, set it on a course to change the world. It was a difficult and often violent path, but it redrew the map of the planet. The story of great powers is a cycle that repeats through time. It teaches us a deep lesson. No one stays on top forever. And sometimes the greatest changes come not from the powerful and secure, but from those who are hungry, divided, and brave enough to ask new questions.